Right. Welcome, Erin.
Hello, so happy to be here.
How are you?
I'm awesome.
Yeah.
Making movies, what could be better?
I'm so excited to be speaking with you about the film that you're currently making, and I would love for you to kind of tell me what this film is about and like where you're at in the process and what kind of support you're looking for.
Sure. Well, the film is called Little White Lies. It is a 32-page one-shot take film at a party in LA. So just something super easy, just threw together.
That's
um,
amazing.
it is what I like to say is a dramedy, which is one of the genres I gravitate to most often, a comedy in the midst of a tragedy. I like to say my movies are like, oh, that hurts.
Right, right. I saw that in your last film that was at
Yes, in
or
subtext. And I
subtext.
actually did collaborate with Olivia Haller on this one as well. She was producer
Awesome.
on the project, came on early to give creative feedback on the script. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the team on it, Hunter's in it. But
Ah,
to go back to like what it's about, so it is in essence thematically, it's about this idea of breadcrumbing, or what I also call the abuse of hope. It's
mm,
the way we get strung along thinking that the thing that we really want is going to happen, and maybe it will and maybe it won't, but it's like, what do you endure and put up with along the way?
yeah.
So the film follows Sophia. She is a young woman who is pursuing her crush. She is trying to define that relationship, get
Mhm,
him to agree to go to her sister's wedding with her. That feels like a pretty officially sort of thing. And I
mhm.
mean, he's really into her. He thinks she's great, but at the end of the day, he is not ready for this level of emotional commitment. And she kind of puts an ultimatum on him, and he's like, well, if we gotta like define it,
Mhm,
it's gonna be
mhm.
a no. And that sends her into a tailspin. And what we realize by the end of the film is the reason that she is so almost desperately looking to, make fetch happen with this relationship
Mhm,
is because a month prior, Jacob manipulated her into sex and she wasn't ready for it. She
mhm,
liked him. She
mhm.
wanted to be there eventually. She wasn't there yet. And Jacob is really, to a degree, oblivious to this as well. He's thinking, this is 2023. Like, we're
Yeah.
sex positive, whatever. So it's very nuanced in that particular approach. It's one
Love
of these
that.
very listen, a rape is a rape, but
Yes.
to the characters, it feels gray.
Mhm,
And it's first of all, just starting with that aspect of the storyline, that was something that I've heard so many people talk like, this is how my rape happened, this is how my rape happened, but you don't
yeah.
see that on film. So that was a starting point. But and I've kind of known for a while that I wanted to tell that story, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to put it together. And a couple months ago, it's when the entire idea for Little White Lies came together, which was, realizing that if you set this story against the backdrop of an LA house party where people are
Mhm.
just very casually talking about the kind of crap they put up with on a
Yeah,
day-to-day basis, I'm
right.
not talking like obvious abuse stuff. I'm not talking about the type of stuff that gets like, a workplace Me Too. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
talking about the cancelable aspects
Yeah.
of workplace abuse. I'm talking about the slow degradation of our
Yep.
boundaries that happens personally and professionally by being just modern people, especially within the context of this movie. I'm talking about people, creatives in LA, but you could definitely apply this across cities, across industries. So,
Mhm.
you'll have a character who is really excited, just got offered a job, but then the guy that offered it to her has just asked her for dinner. And she's
Mhm.
like, is it dinner? Like, can I take this? I guess I should be grateful that I'm attractive. Just that sort of like
Yeah.
justification of, okay, and like you've got another character who is talking about how crazy his boss is, and he's like, this is LA, baby, you got to suffer your way to the top. And so
Oh, yeah.
identify, and it's very subtle. Like, I
Mhm.
think most people who are watching it who don't know the theme ahead of time, it's gonna like maybe come together for them by the end. It's truly meant to be funny and fun up until, again, gut punch.
Right,
That's what
right,
I
right.
do. But it's really, again, it's meant to be everyday people, people that, you know, I'm used to people outside of LA looking at me and my fellow peers as entitled millennials or entitled Gen Zs who, you know, are like vapid and like pursuing their art and whatnot. And so the film allows for that judgment to be there at the beginning, but
Mhm.
slowly chips away at it when you start seeing the effect it's having on people. There's two characters who are best friends, but like hate each other for the moment. Not really. Like there's no
Yeah,
animosity, but
right.
they joke that they hate each other because they're going after the same big promotion.
Mm.
And they've been, you know, they've both been jumping through crazy hoops to go after this opportunity. And by the end, they find out that this person already knew who they were going to hire and they were both being
Yeah.
strung along. And for me, like that storyline really touches upon the way I've felt applying for workshops and grants over
Mhm.
the years, where people tell me right at the beginning, like I'll meet somebody at an event and they'll be like, you should apply to this, you're exactly what we're looking for. And then I give them everything.
Yeah.
I take weeks of my life, I put dollars into it, I attach big names, and I submit, and then I'm asked like, and then I don't get it, and I'm like, well, can I get any feedback? And they're like, no, no, no. And you push for feedback, and they're like, well, you're just not what we're looking for. And I
Mm.
think that's something that so many of us have just felt
Oh.
strung
Mhm.
along.
Mhm.
Um, and while we can't say that that's illegal in the same way that rape is, uh,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just wanted to make a point about the pervasiveness of breadcrumbing in our culture, the pervasiveness of this abuse of hope, of this feeling of being strung along, and truly like open up the dialogue for how are these things connected? Are we more likely to,
Mhm.
like Sophia, pursue a relationship that's abusive to us because we've endured it in
Yeah.
these other contexts, or vice versa?
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, and I really so appreciate you bringing these gray areas because I feel like I May Destroy You was like the show that brought things to the screen that was like gray areas, but also like rape a little, but people had never talked about it in that context. And suddenly, like the floodgates opened up, like just seeing it on screen, people are like, oh, I've dealt with this. I've dealt with this. I mean, that's kind of how like Me Too opened up things. But I think these little gray areas, they're not talked about,
Yeah,
they're just kind of like, oh, it's just something I have to deal with being a woman in Hollywood trying to get ahead. And it's not okay. And I appreciate you putting this story together because I think it'll bring conversation to
yeah.
people in the industry. And then hopefully that'll create a little change by people opening their minds a little bit more. Um, can you talk about like where you guys are at in the filmmaking process? Because I believe you've done a lot already.
Yeah.
So in terms of like where you're at and also what, kind of support you're looking for. I know you're in the middle of a fundraising campaign, so maybe you could talk about that a little bit, but also just people who may have influence too, like
Mhm.
bringing them on board.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So we did finish production. It felt like a miracle. A 32-page oneer is difficult.
yeah.
We finished production in December, just before the holidays. We had raised a certain amount of money, and then I, took a leap of faith and financed the rest of production
Oh, wow.
post on my credit card, and then have been refunding myself retroactively through our
Yeah.
Spark fundraiser. And luckily, we have raised the amount that gets us through production. So I will pay off my credit card this
Yes.
month.
Woohoo. That
But
always
we're
feels
still
good. Yeah.
we are still raising money to cover post production. And post production gets to happen faster the faster I raise that money. So
Mhm.
at the timing of this recording, we have, 3 days, 2.5-ish, 3 days left on Seed and Spark. And then we are so blessed to have Film Independent endorse this project. So there'll be ongoing tax deductible support. So if you're like, oh, I need to throw some money at a nonprofit before I do my
Yeah.
taxes,
Very
hey, consider
Yeah.
us. But so we're currently starting post-production while raising money for it. So I have my editor and my VFX supervisor working now,
Mhm.
and we'll work towards getting a locked cut, at which point then sound design and score and music will come in. And then after that, the next phase will be color and graphics and titling. So it's happening in waves.
Yeah.
I think sound and color are probably going to be the biggest,
Oh,
like, I mean,
yeah.
an exciting challenge, but you know, it's a
Yeah.
lot. Obviously, with a oneer, there's not like the editing. A lot of that is choosing audio sound bites, like to
Right.
like a lot of like Franken editing and swapping and little speed changes here and there.
Right.
Not to downplay, it's still a tremendous amount of work,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
say all that to say the sound and music, I think, is where a lot of the movie will come together. But yeah, so we're at that point. And in terms of the kind of help, like obviously, as already stated, monetary support is
Right.
always encouraged. But
Yes.
there are other ways too. I mean, if someone here has a connection to a film festival and can get us a waiver, we're going to be looking at submitting later this year to festivals. Um, so that's always super helpful. Or if anyone knows someone who is a person of influence who might want to
Mhm.
attach to this project in some sort of EP sort of role in order to help bring that kind of like notoriety to it, to get it
Yes.
into bigger festivals or to get it into the hands of the right executives. I'm using this for my own personal professional growth. I see there's like a twofold plan for this. One, I'm very interested in directing television, specifically in the space that bridges comedy and drama. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, in my unrealistic shoot for the moonness of it all, I would be like White Lotus or
Yeah.
Severance or Succession, you know, just that
Right.
stuff where like, is it a drama? Is it a comedy? Is it a
Yes.
thriller sometimes? Like,
Mhm.
love all of that. But maybe more realistically, a show that could pave the way for me to be there in a number of years. So this is definitely a meant to show that I can handle, you know, everything that a TV show might throw at me with its ambition. But
Yeah.
also Sierra, who I should have already mentioned, Sierra plays the lead, Sophia, and she
Mhm.
also, so I came up with a story,
Then
but I brought
subtext,
her,
right?
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
subtext. So
Yes.
I brought her on to, and we basically wrote the screenplay together. We sat down and actually wrote the first draft together in one weekend, like pitching dialogue back and forth. So she and I would also love to make this into a feature, and we've got some pretty strong ideas already of how we think
Yay.
this world could expand and grow, but while staying the same, staying at a house
Right.
party, like staying really contained with a roughly the same size of cast. So yeah, if there are people who are interested in maybe, you know, talking about that,
Right.
we're always down.
Oh, that's great. And then I'm gonna link everything. Is the film independent thing up as
Yeah,
well?
I can
As
send you a link.
far Yeah, okay. So I'll include both links and some more info obviously on Cinema Femme. But was there anything you wanted to talk about more, like in terms of your crew or people that have been, just people you want to highlight that are part of the project?
Sure. Let me just run down a couple people real quick. And
Yeah.
I don't obviously have time to run through all of them, but Beth Napoli, who is the cinematographer and also a producer on this project, she has been like a rock in my life for a decade now. She shoots the vast majority of my stuff. She's amazing. I think everyone should check her out and hire her, but just not when I need her.
Yeah. I-
And I'd say the same about Hayden Greeley, who is also on subtext. He is our operator, our Trinity operator on this film, also a producer on it. And he is just really incredibly smart. Like, not only is he skilled with his apparatus, with his, you know, his rig, but he also has really strong story instincts and he is just a great creative force. Pete Hickok was an awesome production designer. really wowed us with a limited budget. You'll see it in the photos. Chris Eaton came back to AD after ADing subtext, and I just want to shout out to him and thank him because this was a gnarly, crazy, crazy set with a lot to keep track of. Our focus puller, Jen, like, thank goodness for just like keeping this movie in focus would have been like I don't know how anyone does it. Like it was just like
Right.
go anywhere, actors, and it's in focus. Amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's many more people, but I do want to, before we run out of time, also just add something that I think was like important for me in approaching the subject matter. And one of the reasons why, like I said earlier, I made the character of Jacob, or Sierra and I together wrote the character of Jacob to be likable. And I mean, there are clues that he's like a tiny bit douchey here or there, but like in general, we really tried to write it as if like we could relate to him as much as possible. And the reason for that is I think that this, you know, what the movie is trying to say about the abuse of hope and breadcrumbing and the systemic nature of the string along culture that we live in, we're all, I mean, at least I'll take culpability for myself, but like I'm a part of that, you know. I recognize that part of like coming out, like part of making that change is to be able to own it when you're a part of it. And you know, it was funny because I was like bringing people, I was like calling people up to ask them to work on this movie, and I was like, so I don't have much. And I was like, which is like my own personal shame right now because I'm talking about this subject matter, but it's true. Like we live just, and you know, I want to own my part of it, but also acknowledge that like there's so much about the way our culture is set up, particularly in the United States, where it just makes it very, very hard to not use and abuse people. And I don't want to live my life that way. And I think it's important, like, as we get more and more resourced, to be more and more committed to, you know, doling out those resources in a way that's fair and equitable. So my hope is that as I move forward in my career, I really can pay back the people who, like, I don't want to string along the people who have been in my corner. I really don't want to.
Yeah, that's great. And then last thing, I'm actually curious. I saw in the Seed and Spark and actually on socials that The Devil Wears Prada was some kind of aspect of like inspired you to make this film. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because
Yeah, I mean, like,
great.
I just so vividly remember the first time I saw The Devil Wears Prada. Like, I skipped class and went and watched it alone in a theater because I thought that movie looked so great. And it was great. I like, it was just, I truly think it defined the millennial generation, or at least the Oregon Trail millennials.
Yes, I
Um,
love that.
you know, it was like, I know the point of the movie was that, like, she shouldn't have had to go through all that. But like all I got from this movie was, oh my gosh, Andy is amazing. She's like crushing it in her career. By the end of the movie, she's 10 times cuter and way more awesome, and she can get a better guy anyways. Like,
Yeah.
and so it just normalized the 80-hour work week. And I think watching that movie and then quickly, you know, graduating from college and having, you know, writer's strike, recession, this general feeling of, you know, you work in an industry where it's so much fun and so glamorous that you're lucky to have a job at all because everyone wants it. I think like that movie kind of really ushered me into that, what I'm calling little white lie, this lie that like, I'm lucky enough to be working as someone who works really hard and has, you know, paid their, you know, dues, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, movies matter.
I think yes. And I think that's a great connection. And I love that. And I'm excited to champion this film and get you connected. And yeah, donate, people. This is a great project and it's needed to be seen on screen. So thank you, Erin, for joining. And
I also, can I really fast shout out my
yes,
producers because I was doing
yes,
department heads
of
and like I don't even know why I didn't do this, but Olivia Haller and Elle Shaw, like I asked them to do the impossible and they did it. And I like want to work with them forever. So I really should have said
Yay.
that first.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well,
Okay.
thank you. And I'm pumped and excited. And this is a great project. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Erin. Okay. Oh.